All right. Welcome back. This is Anthony's Political Podcast, episode 13. Thank you for your continued support. I appreciate it a lot. I appreciate the likes. I appreciate the views. And if you're new here, I post every Sunday and Wednesday around 3 p.m. So, follow along for some news and some opinions on it. Okay, let's get into some housekeeping. All right. First order of business comes from X on TikTok, Libs of TikTok. So it says 2 individuals perform a sexual themed show in BDSM gear in front of students at Oak Grove High School. The event also included a drag queen twerking for students. So this looks like a pep rally or something. Let's see. And it's got 2 people. One of them's getting a lap dance. That is okay. On a leash. We got what looks like a drag queen doing some kind of routine here. All right. Look, I don't have any issues with drag and with, dancing in BDSM gear, okay? If it's in the context of nightlife, okay? What I mean by that is a drag show, I'm never going to go to one. Because that's, I'm not into that stuff. That's it's a little wild for me, but I'm not. I don't think you're a terrible person if you go to one as an adult. However, I do think it's pretty disgusting when you have this kind of thing happening in front of minors. I mean, think about it. High school age is like 14 to 18, so the odds of you being a minor are pretty much like 3 to 1, because freshmen, sophomores, and many juniors are minors still. And then you have some juniors who are, 18, let's say, and then you turn 18 as a senior usually. So, with a little less than 3 to 1 ratio of of minors at your school, this drag and BDSM stuff is not something you should be having at a pep rally, okay? You want to know the kinds of entertainment that we had at pep rallies when I was in high school? Just to give you context, I was in high school in 2017. All right, that's when I was a senior. So I'm 24 years old right now. When I was in school, our pep rallies entertainment was like, a DJ. We had, there was one year we had like BMX riders, like, they had a giant like skate park thing set up in the middle of the gym, and like a pro BMXer came by and like did some tricks and stuff. And one guy was flipping his bike over the other guy. They actually had a teacher. They had her sit in like the middle of the ramp, and like the biker did like a backflip over her, and it was like a near miss. It was like, the wheel was like 2 inches from her head, and everyone was like, oh, like that's the kind of entertainment you are supposed to have at a pep rally. Not 2 guys, one's twerking it up on the other one, giving him a lap dance, and he's, walks away with his leash, like, and like, you can't do that. Come on. This is, you're displaying like promiscuous activity in front of people who are minors. That's not okay. All right. So I just wanted to talk about that in housekeeping first, because it's one of the only topics that's like not related to Israel in this podcast. This has been very Israel heavy. I apologize for that. It's not the only thing I want to talk about. However, it's overwhelmingly in the news. Everything is, in some way connected to Israel. So, I wanted to put this first because it's one of the only stories we have today that's not about Israel. Okay. Second order of business in housekeeping. This is from N Wokeness on X. It says Rite Aid looted in Philly. Okay, remember, they just want bread to feed their families. That is a callback to AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, uh, when asked about how she feels about looting and stuff taking place in inner cities, uh, her response was, we shouldn't be quick to condemn these people because they're just trying to get bread to feed their families. They're just they're dealing with economic and you know political policies that are destroying their ability to provide for themselves and their families. All right, so she made it sound like these are just good fathers doing good fatherly things, um and obviously you know that was a load of bunk. I'm sure there's someone stealing bread to feed their families, but most of the time when people are stealing, it's items that can be resold, and they're looting from alcohol business, like liquor places and tech stores and all this stuff. So let's see what's up with this looting in Rite Aid. Okay, so we got a bunch of people flood in, all in hoodies and sweatshirts. I love how this guy is comfortable enough to just leave his bike right at the entrance while he goes and loots candy and condoms and anything else that's on that shelf there. Like, you gotta, that's just like, that's hilarious to me that you'd bring your bicycle inside of the building, the establishment. All right, out of like, he's got no fear that anyone else here is gonna steal it. He's not worried about anything like that. He's not worried that security is gonna punch his lights out and he's gonna need to run outside the store real quick. He's just like, I'm gonna get in, steal some stuff, get back on my bike, and ride my bike out the door. That's kind of funny to me. Like, we got people just flooding in. They're still coming in. They're destroying things. They're knocking stuff over. Look at this. This girl's got a garbage bag that she's just ready to fill with stuff. I mean, come on. Look, there's even this kid. This kid looks so out of shape. If this kid robbed the store, I bet like $50, bro, or $100 that he's getting caught in like the first 10 seconds. This kid's getting his lights rocked out by the police. This kid's not making it out of the parking lot. All right? It's usually those skinny types you got to watch out for. You know what I'm saying? The guys who could run a mile. They got a 6-minute mile. They did cross country in high school. You know what I'm saying? Like, those are the guys you got to worry about. This dude, he's not making it past the parking lot. Look, guy walked out with a box in his hand full of stuff. Look at that. Then they're just peacefully making their way out. They're just, just walking out with their stuff. Not running. No rush. Nothing like that. That's crazy, bro. I mean, the amount of trust that these guys must have in the fact that the cops are not going to do anything. And if they do, they're getting sent right back home like 2 days later. Bro, it's wild. It's crazy that the lack of like caution that they have here. And it's all because of our policies. We've crippled the police and their ability to do their jobs. We've defunded police departments. They don't have enough personnel. We've taken away stores' abilities to have stopping power in these situations. I just talked about last episode. Go watch it. Obviously, it's highly recommended. But in last episode, I just talked about how people in Finland, similar things are happening. All around the world, because this world's crazy and stuff. But in Finland, there's store clerks that are stopping these things. There was one girl who basically like dragged a guy out of the store, by his shirt, took back the items and walked back inside. There was another girl who pulled out pepper spray. Excuse me, and she hit two guys with pepper spray. That's some good stuff right there. That's what we want to see happen in Philly. I want to see a clerk who's outnumbered just spraying pepper spray. I want to see the place fill with tear gas because these people are outnumbered and they're just like, you ain't stealing today, right? But in all seriousness, these are, we've taken away the police's ability to do policing. Now it seems like the only time the police ever do anything is when they pull you over for speeding. The police are like, they're able to do the stupid stuff that no one likes and everyone gets aggravated with, but like they're not able to do the job that we want, which is keep people off the streets, because they just arrest people and then DAs don't prosecute. They just send them with a slap on the wrist. And, after a while, you have a guy who's been arrested 32 times and he's still free. He's still a free guy. He's got a couple assault and batteries under his belt. He abused his girlfriend. He's got, 3 sons with, 2 different women or 3 different women. Like, and he's living a street rat life where he just steals things, gets arrested, goes back onto the street, and it's just this cycle. But the problem is, it's not a closed circuit cycle, okay? And I guess I just made that term up, but I wouldn't have like the biggest issue ever with it if this guy was like, if people were just degenerates by themselves and it's not affecting many people. But the fact is, like, the guy who's been arrested 8 times already and he's back, he's not committing victimless crimes, okay? He's not just doing drugs, he's not just getting drunk, he's not just doing whatever. He's hurting people, he's beating people up, he's possibly killing people, he's burglarizing businesses, even stealing from big businesses. Like, some people don't have that big of an issue. They're like, oh, the business is so big. Like, Rite Aid's a huge company. They're not going to care about the losses. But they will eventually. Like, you keep stealing from Rite Aid in downtown Philly, guess where they're moving? Not Philly. They're moving somewhere else where there's less looting and lower probability that their store is going to get busted up. It's not cheap to just have your store get busted into, twice a week, and you have to pay for damages. You got a piece of plywood where the window used to be. That doesn't incentivize shoppers to come in too. All that does is further make it look like that's a degenerate place, and then you attract more looters. Because no one's shopping there, so all the inventory getting sent there is just basically just storing up for the looters to steal. Okay, so I just wanted to show that in housekeeping. Good tweet from End Wokeness, and we gotta fix this because our justice system is super fractured. Okay, all right, next thing, this is a picture from Drama Alert. Okay, just basically a regular tweet. Breaking. I don't know if this was breaking news, but okay, the U.S. debt rose by $1 billion per hour for the past 19 days. You want to guess what made the debt go up so fast? I'll give you one guess, and I'll even give you a hint. It starts with the letter U and ends with crane. Did you guess it right? It's Ukraine, okay? We're giving money to Ukraine. We're giving aid to Iran. We're giving money to Israel. We're giving money to every other nation. We're getting shafted on UN costs and hosting, the costs that are accompanied with hosting, the UN, hosting other countries. We're carrying everyone else's weight in NATO. We're giving money to things that are stupid. We're letting in millions of illegal immigrants who are just draining our society. They're working, they're not getting taxed for properties or for anything else, really. They're working under the table a lot of times. They're sending money outside the country back overseas to their family. So our economy is just bleeding in like 19 different areas. So $1 billion per hour is kind of crazy, but I guess it makes sense. So let's move on. All right, another one from Drama Alert. I just thought this one was kind of funny. It says Jada Pinkett Smith claims her and Will Smith haven't been together since 2016. Okay, now obviously no one cares if Jada and Will are together. However, this is a good point because the tweet says, "What was the slap for then?" Okay, so the picture of Will and Jada. There's a picture of the slap. I'm sure you guys all know about the Will Smith slapping at the Oscars or Grammys or whatever. I don't follow. I don't know what they're called at the award show. Okay, Will Smith slapped Chris Rock in the face after he made a mention about Jada Pinkett Smith's, like, I think it was baldness. He mentioned her or something with the G.I. Joe movie. And you know, the joke didn't go over so well with Will. He slapped Chris Rock in the face. You know, it's been, I think it's probably been close to a year and a half or 2 years. Okay. And I'm no math major, but 2016 is still earlier than 3 years from now. Let's be generous and say 2020. That's still 4 years before. Okay. So that's kind of wild that Will Smith is being, I hate to use this word, but he's being this much of a simp. Okay. That he's literally he literally puts his hands on another person for making a joke using words with his wife that he's not with anymore, according to her. Okay. So in my opinion, there's really not a lot of circumstances where someone's words should result in, you know, physical assault. Okay. I get that, you know, it's smacking someone for disrespecting your girl is, you know, you got to do that sometimes. And I understand that idea. I don't think I would hit someone just for speaking ill of myself or my girlfriend, okay, or my wife or whatever. Like, you know, this was escalated from 0 to 100. Like, Chris Rock was like, "Oh, I can't wait to see you in the G.I. Joe movie," or, you know, "I saw you in the G.I. Joe movie. It was great." Jada Smith makes like this face like she doesn't, you know, she wasn't okay with the joke. And then Will Smith sees that and like gets up and just smacks him. Like, if you're gonna hit somebody, it should have been escalated the correct way. If you're gonna escalate, okay? And that's not how you do it. Like, it would have been fine if he walked up on stage and said to Chris Rock, "Keep my wife's name out of your mouth or we're gonna have a problem." You know what I'm saying? It wouldn't have been like the best response. I think the best response, honestly, would have just been to avoid it. Like, just ignore it. It's just a joke. You know, you don't have to just defend your respect. Okay? But that was like the complete wrong way to deal with it. And it's just crazy how we find out later that they weren't even together, according to her. Okay? And I was looking for the source on this. There's the comments don't provide a source, you know. Kind of stupid. So I looked around. I found it on a couple news sources. I chose the CNN one just because CNN was like the most popular news source that I saw come up. You know, I think it was on USA Today. There's been a few other places. I think Vulture had it. But yeah, let's read it. So it said Jada Pinkett Smith has revealed that she and her husband Will have been living completely separate lives since 2016. Okay, a clip from her forthcoming NBC News primetime special with Hoda Kotb. I hope I said that right, or Hoda Kotb. Pinkett Smith said the couple had not previously gone public with their separation because they were not ready yet. Okay. They were still trying to figure out between the two of them how to be in a partnership. I think she means open relationship. How do we present that to people? Okay. You haven't figured that out. Pinkett Smith is 52 and Will 55. Have been married since 1997. That's before I was born. Pinkett Smith said they're not legally divorced. Okay. So separated is not divorced. Their marriage has come under scrutiny during the period. She says that they have been apart. In July 2020, singer August Alsina revealed that he had been romantically involved with Pinkett Smith, something she confirmed during an interview with her husband on Red Table Talk. Okay? Bro, Will Smith being there is crazy. I'm pretty sure August Alsina is like not old. Let me see. Yeah, he's 31. And what is she? 52, it said? How old is Jaden Smith? 26. Okay. I'm pretty sure that Jaden Smith was actually friends with August Alsina. Because people joked about like Jada Pinkett Smith like hooking up with her son's friend, and how he's like, August Alsina is like the ultimate like, you know, the ultimate puller of baddies, I'll say, because this, I want to keep this family friendly podcast. But I mean, if we're being realistic and honest here, it's kind of the ultimate flex if you're like a younger guy and you are smooth enough to have your friend's mom attracted to you. That's like in school, every kid in school, like high school, like college age, that's like every dude's dream. Every dude's dream is like, yo, I want to pull somebody's mom one day. You know what I'm saying? So I'm pretty sure that Jada Pinkett Smith kind of got clowned for that, and Will Smith got clowned for like his wife literally while they're married or still separated, let's say, while they're not legally divorced, she's like parading around with her son's friend. It's kind of funny, you know? So, an interview with People, Jada Pinkett Smith opened up about the incident, which she said, like many other people, she initially thought was a comedic bit between the two men. I thought this is a skit. I was like, there's no way that will hit him. Okay. It wasn't until Will started to walk back to his chair that I realized it was not a skit. Okay. So she told the publication that as soon as they were alone, she asked Smith, "Are you okay?" Pinkett Smith told Kobe during the interview that the marriage fractured because of a lot of things. Okay. So, I mean, I guess props for them that they're not divorced, and that they seem to be trying to make it work. But I just really feel bad for Will Smith because, like, I'm pretty sure Jada Pinkett Smith is in like an open relationship, so he could get like blocked by any dude at any time, which kind of stinks. It seems like she hasn't been the same since like the Tupac thing. So, because if you guys didn't know, I'm pretty sure she dated Tupac, and then he obviously is not alive anymore. So that hit her hard, and so it's possible that someone takes a long time to recover for something like that. All right. So let's continue. We got a tweet from Steven Crowder. We're getting into our Israel section. This section is pretty large. I'm pretty sure all of this is Israel up here. All of this. Yeah. Everything from here until here is all Israel. So we're going to try and keep this section moderately short. And a lot of this is like just thoughts that I have seen that I like, and I don't want to spend too much time on them, but it's just something that I wanted to briefly mention. So we got an X from Steven Crowder. Okay. He says, "Do you think there's a contradiction in supporting a proxy war in Israel while being against one in Ukraine?" Okay. Because, this tweet is obviously coming from a place of criticism with conservatives. Okay. Steven Crowder is a conservative, obviously. But he's calling into question the seemingly undying support for Israel while people could care less about Ukraine. Okay, because conservatives have historically, I mean, not historically, but ever since this conflict, well, this war has taken place in Ukraine and Russia, conservatives have been mostly against it. Okay, a lot of populist conservatives on the right feel that the war in Ukraine is pointless, that we have no business being involved there, that it's really not in our best interest. I'm of that belief. I do think we should put America first. Russia and Ukraine's land conflict, land dispute, whatever you want to call it, is not our business totally. Okay. I am not really a fan of war. I don't really know anyone who is. And so as someone who is anti-war, the Ukraine conflict is a waste of our time and money. As for Israel, I do have a soft spot for Israel, obviously, because I'm a Christian. I do want to see Israel succeed, and I don't want to see them getting attacked by anybody. However, I am still skeptical about, having a proxy war where we help Israel and we destroy the Middle East again. There's just something that doesn't sit right with me about it. I really don't know exactly what it is. But if I'm being completely honest, I would be lying if I said I was like, we have to send all our money to Israel. We have to, bring troops there and stuff. Again, this is horrible that it's happening. There's casualties on both sides that are atrocious. And it's war. War is ugly. It's never pretty. But I don't think, something about it's just not rubbing me the right way. I don't like the media's coverage of this whole thing. I've been seeing so much overwhelming content just getting pumped out by news sources about the Israel and Palestine dispute and the war that has broken out recently. Like, it's just, there's too much media stuff and there's too many people that are super hot on this topic. And to me, it honestly seems like where we stand on this is like, there's Israel's supporters, which is like literally all of America. And then there's Palestine supporters, which is much of the Middle East and like many Americans of Middle Eastern descent. You know what I'm saying? So it's really weird the types of people that support each side. Israel seems to have boomers on their side. They seem to have obviously Jews, American Jews, that is, as well. American politicians are like overwhelmingly in support of Israel, with the exception of a few. And then it seems that like younger people in the US seem to support Palestine more, So, and then Christians obviously are like super in support of Israel. It's a weird divide. It's really weird, and I think Steven Crowder asks a good question here when he's asking if we think there's a contradiction in supporting the war in Israel versus being against one in Ukraine. And I think there's a bit of a contradiction. I don't think they're the same issue at all, though. I mean, with the Ukraine and Russia, it's a land dispute between two nations that they feel needs to be settled through war, I guess. But with Israel and Palestine, this is kind of an ancient conflict. It's been going on for a very long time. This thing has its roots in like biblical times and in the Bible. And I'm wouldn't be surprised if if the Quran mentions this, or if ancient Arabs mention this conflict, as we'll see from a video that I want to talk about, there's a lot deeper context than many people are acknowledging here. Okay. So the next thing I wanted to read through on here is it's also from X. Okay. It's from Tim Pool. And he quoted a tweet from Cernovich. Okay. It says, "Dear pro-life Christians, when babies die in the womb in Gaza, does that count as abortion or is it something else?" The answer to that is it is murder. Okay? It's horrible. If there's a pro-life Christian who's in support of children in the womb dying in Gaza, that is definitely not a good take. Okay? That is very contradictory. You don't get to say you're pro-life if you support pro-life causes in the US with, you're opposing Planned Parenthood, you oppose all these abortion things. But then when it comes to, Palestinian children in the womb dying from bombs, you don't shed a tear. Like, that's, you got to be consistent. If you're pro-life, you're pro-life. Okay? So if you're pro-life, you have to be horrified at the tragedies that are happening over in Israel and Palestine. Okay? And it's a perfectly valid take and a perfectly valid stance to mourn for both sides. That's kind of where I'm at right now. Call me a fence sitter, call me lukewarm, but you know, it's a shame to see death on any occasion. Okay, it is a shame to see death in any occasion. And I do believe that all people deserve a chance at life, and all people deserve life. So it's, so for Cernovich and Tim Pool tweeting, I'm sure there are some pro-life Christians who are not that sympathetic towards people in Gaza dying, especially children in Gaza. But, as for me, that is horrible. It's horrible. Okay, next up, we got a tweet from Jack Posobiec, again mentioning Cernovich. Cerno pointed out that there's a lot of people who call themselves pro-life and are not calling for mass killings of every man, woman, and child in Gaza, and then now are mad that he asked them how they would hold both beliefs simultaneously. So I liked these two tweets. I kind of couldn't decide which one, so I just put both. But again, this is right. You got to be consistent. If you're pro-life, you're pro-life. Okay, next up, we got Libs of TikTok. Okay, this is a video from this person on TikTok. I don't know. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. But it says, guys butchering babies, raping and murdering women, slaughtering over 1,200 innocent people, and taking hundreds of hostages is just colonizer math. Okay, let's see.
You've heard of girl math. You've heard of boy math. Now let's hear about colonizer math. Colonizer math is being enacted in surprise when violent colonization and oppression is met with violent resistance. People have the right to resist.
So, pretty short video. The reason this is in housekeeping/news is because I want to preface this by saying war is ugly. Okay? It's dangerous. It's not good. No one should like going to war. Okay? It's a terrible thing. And in some cases, it is a necessary evil. In other cases, it is completely unjustified. Okay? However, getting that main point out of the way, what she's talking about here, colonizers colonizing and then people resisting, I agree with this video, to be honest. The part where I differ from her is that she's talking about this in like a negative way, like, colonization is evil and all this stuff. I agree with that, but the reality is colonization happens, okay? And it's been the way of the world since 6,000 years ago, okay? It's just how reality is. The reality is that someone is going to knock at your door trying to take your property, and, you're going to want to defend it, okay? So, again, colonization is evil. It is horrible. Even if it doesn't initiate that way, sometimes someone wants to colonize another place to make it better or to have a mutually beneficial relationship. It usually turns south at some point and gets violent. Think about the American colonies with Britain. Okay, Britain sent explorers that was, it was their own. You know what I'm saying? They started to colonize, and the relationship between Englishmen and Native Americans probably wasn't awful at first. Okay, then it degenerated, and then on top of that, you had American colonists now who had been living in America for a little while. Britain started to get stingy with their stuff. They started taxing them. They started to not consider them the same people, the same lineage, the same heritage. And then what do you get? Americans overthrow the British government, throw their tea in the Boston Harbor, throw the middle finger to Britain, and they say, get out of here. We're a country now, and you're giving us our freedom. And Americans killed a lot of British people to get their freedom. It's an ugly thing. And I get where she's coming from with this. I think her take on it, though, is that like she supports Palestine, like overthrowing Israel, and I don't know. It seems like we differ on that, because I don't consider Israel being colonizers in that instance. You know, I don't necessarily think it's a dispute over who's colonizing and who's not. It's mostly a dispute over who's entitled by their religion to this land. Okay, it's more so a religious dispute, not a colonization. So, you know, that's where I differ from this. Okay, next up, same on the topic of Israel. This is from Daily Wire. We're talking about DeSantis a little bit. So DeSantis on the terror attacks in Israel. It says Hamas is Iran's tool to wage terror against Israel. Okay. So let's see how DeSantis feels about this whole thing. Florida Governor DeSantis said during an interview over the weekend that Hamas terrorist organization was Iran's tool for carrying out terrorist attacks against Israel. Okay. The remarks come after Palestinian terrorists murdered 700 plus Israelis over the weekend in a massive rocket attack followed by widespread shootings throughout Israel. The Republican presidential candidate said the first thing that needed to happen was making sure Israel knows that the U.S. stands behind it as they exercise overwhelming force against the terrorists. Okay. I'm curious what he means by stand behind. Okay. I'm curious. I just want to know what he thinks about that. So part of the reason we're in this situation is because the past iterations of attacks, which admittedly were not at this level, Israel would respond, but there'd be immediately a lot of pressure for Israel to stand down, he said. Israel would even start getting blamed. And so they never really uprooted the terror networks of Hamas and even Hezbollah like they probably should have. Okay. So now we see where his thoughts are. He believes Israel needs to take out Hamas and Hezbollah and, uproot them completely. Okay, DeSantis also shed light on one of the most horrifying aspects of the Palestinian terrorist attacks that's gotten a little attention in the media. Okay, you had terrorists storming residential communities armed with machine guns, taking people hostage. I've never seen some of the horrors. He said they would actually kill somebody, film it, and upload it to that person's social media, so the family is seeing their loved one killed because of what they're doing. Okay, DeSantis said Israel understands that by far the top threat in the region is Iran, and that Hamas was definitely a tool or instrument for the Iranians to conduct terrorism against Israel. Okay? So, it is interesting. I have heard a lot of different things. One of the things I've heard, though, is that Israel offers usually a 48-hour window of time. They warn citizens to get out. Okay? Before they bomb an area. And I'm told that obviously Hamas does not. However, I've also heard that Hamas issued a warning before attacking. And I also hear that Egypt caught wind of this and warned Israel. Okay, so, I'm curious to see how this unfolds. I'm curious to know what's true because, again, the problem with so much happening and so much going around in the media is that it's hard to know what's true, what's not. It's hard to know if any of it is true. It's hard to know if all of it is true. Okay. Next up, we're going to talk about Zelensky. Okay. I couldn't let Zelensky escape one of my episodes. We got to talk about him because the guy loves the attention. He loves making things about himself. Okay. So let's see this from New York Times. See what he's got to say. Zelensky says Gaza war furthers Russian aims. So he's saying, guys, don't have a war in Gaza. I need more money from the U.S. Let's see what he's actually saying. The Ukrainian president said Moscow was aiming to sow division in the region and attack on Israel could distract allies from his country's conflict. Sorry, I keep yawning today. President Zelensky of Ukraine has accused Russia of wanting to precipitate conflict in the Middle East to undermine international support for Ukraine. Okay, in comments that reflect concern that the war between Israel and the militant group Hamas could distract attention from Kiev's fight. In remarks released on social media on Monday, Zelensky, who's repeatedly expressed support for Israel, also agreed to seek to rally support for his country at a time when Ukraine is facing stiff Russian resistance on the battlefield amid signs of wavering support among a few of its allies. Okay, so he seems like he's picking up on the fact that many countries are getting spread a little thin, you know? I mean, think about it hypothetically. I'm not saying that Germany or another country like Germany is helping anyone, but let's just say they were. Let's hypothetically say they were, okay? Let's also hypothetically assume that Germany is having energy issues, okay? Or Britain, either one, Britain or Germany, okay? Let's do Britain because Britain has actually pledged support for Ukraine. I'm not sure if Germany has, okay? So Britain, they've been doing pretty bad in the electricity production arena, okay? There's actually a game show out in Britain. I heard that the grand prize of winning the game show is you get your electric bill paid for 4 months. So that's stupid. That's how you know that they're not energy independent, and the world depends on Russia for energy, and support got yanked. You know what I mean? That's why you don't mess with you don't poke the bear. Russia's the oil bear, and we just poked it. Okay? So Britain having electricity issues, they have trouble generating electricity. They've been telling people, watch your consumption. We may need to limit consumption. They're also giving money to Ukraine. So in addition to residents not being able to afford their electric bill and needing to compete on game shows to afford their house, in addition to that, we also have Britain giving money and support to Ukraine, probably sending weapons there. Wouldn't surprise me if they sent troops, to be honest, but I haven't heard that they've sent troops. So let's just stick to, intel and money. Okay. Now this thing with Israel breaks out. Hypothetically, if Britain is to send aid to Israel, now they're dividing up resources. That technically is aid that they could have sent to Ukraine. Okay. So Zelensky's upset that someone else is taking his spotlight and they're at war. No one else is allowed to go to war because he needs money from his war. Okay. So some Republican members of U.S. Congress have argued against support for the government in Kiev, while Slovakia recently elected a political party that expressed support for Russia. Okay. At this time, Poland's objections to movement of Ukraine's agricultural exports through its territory have cooled the relationship between the two allies. Russia is interested in triggering a war in the Middle East so that a new source of pain and suffering can undermine world unity, increase discord, and contradictions. Okay, and thus help Russia destroy freedom in Europe, Zelensky said in the speech released overnight. Okay, Russia on Monday expressed concern about events in Israel, but its response has been muted. Okay, I don't expect Russia to say anything substantial about Israel and Palestine. If I had to guess, without reading what I just read, I would assume that Russia would support Palestine, because Russia has other Arab allies that are not the closest with Israel. Okay. I just think it's crazy that this guy has the audacity. This guy meaning Zelensky. Zelensky has the audacity to get upset that someone else went to war and is stealing his thunder. You know what I mean? Like, dude, come on. How can you be so prideful and egotistical that you're just like, the rest of the world needs to not help Israel and help me? Like, what? Go back to Ukraine and help your soldiers fight, dude. You obviously believe Russia's this horrible world power that's seeking destruction of everybody. Like, I don't know. It's just annoying. Like, the world is not about you, Zelensky. Go back to acting. All right. The last thing I want to say about Israel comes from Timcast, IRL. It was with a take that Phil Labonte had. Let's see what he's got to say.
Yeah. We were talking. I disagree about the context.
Real quick. So this comes from an episode of Timcast where they have on Max Blumenthal from, I believe he's from the Gray Report or something like that. It's called. Let me see. I can't remember. It's Gray something, but let's continue. Okay, let's go back about 5 seconds.
We were talking. I disagree about the context, the modern context being the actual driver. And we were talking earlier today before the show about the actual driver. It is biblical. It goes all the way back to Genesis, between the feud between Ishmael and Isaac, or the fact that the story says that Isaac was was chosen by God, and Ishmael is the father of the Arabs. Isaac's the father of the Jews. This is like the Hatfield and McCoy feud on steroids. It goes back thousands and thousands and thousands, 3,000 years or whatever. I don't know how far back, but people that put it into a modern context, I understand that. Like, because there are things that inflame the tensions, but the tensions go far beyond just, it's deeper than Islam.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that most Americans don't realize. Americans think that it's about a religion, and it's not. It's an ethnic feud that goes far deeper than a religion.
I think that a lot of the tension comes.
I would disagree with the last thing he said, okay? I agree that this is biblical, okay? Hi, Ian. Big fan. I would agree that this is a biblical thing, okay? It does go back to Isaac versus Ishmael, okay? If you're unfamiliar with the story, it's in Genesis. It's talking about Abraham. For argument's sake, I'll go through it a little bit. Basically, Abraham has his wife, okay? His name is Abram originally, and he's married a woman named Sarai, okay? And basically, they want a kid, okay? They are getting old. They've been trying to have a kid for a long time, and they can't have one. They can't seem to conceive, okay? Basically, Abram gets appeared to in a dream by God. God changes his name to Abraham, okay? So Abram means father. Abraham means father of many nations. So, God made a covenant with Abraham and promised him that he would have many, many descendants, okay? And that he would have a son, and he was to name him Isaac, okay? So basically, he didn't tell him that his name was going to be Isaac, originally, but some things happened. Basically, Abraham's wife, Sarai, basically laughed at God when she was told that she's going to have a kid. So he said, you're going to name your son Isaac for laughter. That's what the name Isaac means. So, they've been waiting a long time, and they finally conceive. They conceive Isaac around the age of 100. However, before that, they kind of got a little bit impatient, and Sarai was like, listen, like, we've been waiting a long time. I want a kid. Take my servant, okay, and have a baby with her. So Abraham has a baby with, their servant, and they name him Ishmael, okay? Problem is, he's not the one that God promised that they would have. So when they do have Isaac, essentially what happens is their descendants become separated, okay? And Isaac is known as, one of the fathers of Israeli people, the Jews, okay? The nation of Israel. Because his descendants, it's Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, so on. So the nation of Israel is birthed out of Isaac, okay? Ishmael was not supposed to be part of that covenant, okay? However, God still said that he would bring many descendants from Ishmael, okay? He promised Ishmael's mother that, he would also be a father of many nations. And so Ishmael's descendants became the Arab people, okay? So, if you think about it, the Israeli people and the Arab people are actually very, very close together. They come from the same father, essentially. They have the same father. And, Islam mentions Abraham in the Quran, to my knowledge. So, there's a lot of common ground, but they're not the same thing. But I would disagree with Phil about this. It is not an ethnic dispute. It is a religious dispute, okay? The dispute here is that God promised that land to the Israeli people, okay? The Jews were promised that land by God, and they believe it is their right to inhabit that land because of that, okay? The Bible talks about this. The Bible talks about the fact that that land is supposed to be Jewish land, okay? However, there's also the descendants of Ishmael, and in Islam, that land is supposed to be theirs, okay? So it is a religious land dispute that goes back a very long time, okay? It's not necessarily ethnic. The root of it is religious, okay? So I would agree that it's been an ethnic dispute maybe for possibly for longer. I'm not sure, but you know, in terms of what the context is for all of this, that is it. That's the context for a lot of interactions between Israel and the rest of the Middle Eastern countries, okay? It's that it's either a land dispute like that, or they are retaliating and believing that, Israel should not exist, okay? This was all prophesied in the Bible. God told Israel that their enemies would be many, but that, they wouldn't be overtaken by their enemies. So, and there's going to come a day where, the Bible explains that there's going to be a day where every single nation around Israel is all attacking them at the same time. And Israel is going to win. So, this is a religious thing. So that's all I wanted to talk about with Israel and Gaza. But we can now move on to the rest of the news, okay? This comes from Benny Johnson on X. This is actually COVID related, okay? So Rand Paul said this. We now have emails that show him saying that he knows it was gain of function, meaning Fauci, okay? The virus looked manipulated and that he was worried that this came from the Wuhan lab. This is a bombshell revelation, and this will eventually bring down Fauci, okay? I wholeheartedly hope that Fauci is arrested for this, because this is what we've been saying for a long time. We knew he knows that it's gain of function, okay? That it was gain of function research, which is not good. It's not allowed. And on top of that, he's lied to Congress, which is illegal, okay? Let's see what Rand Paul says about this.
From the very beginning, Anthony Fauci knew he was involved with funding this lab, and he did everything possible. It's throughout our government. 8 different agencies in our government are covering up their support for this lab in Wuhan. It's ongoing as we speak. Even though we've had unanimous Congress declassify the information, I have classified, unclassified information that's being withheld from me to this day. But we have evidence, yes, that they were dishonest, that Anthony Fauci lied in hearings to me, which is a felony, punishable up to 5 years. We now have emails that show him saying that he knew it was gain of function, that the virus looked manipulated, and that he was worried that this came from the Wuhan lab. February 1st of 2020. Then he spent the last 3 years saying nothing to see here. We also know that there was a safety committee that should have reviewed this, and we know that Anthony Fauci went around the safety committee. The safety committee set up in place to make sure this wouldn't happen, never saw the Wuhan funding because Anthony Fauci allowed the funding to go around the safety committee. This is a bombshell revelation, and this will eventually bring down Anthony Fauci.
Okay, so there's Rand Paul saying Fauci knew it was gain of function research, he lied, and it's punishable by up to 5 years in prison. So I want to see him serve 5 years. I want to see him serve 500 years, because the amount of subterfuge that this guy was involved in is ridiculous, okay? It's crazy. This dude needs to just not have a microphone anymore, okay? He should be on trial, and he should receive a, he should get the book thrown at him, okay? Because, I mean, when you're in a position of so much authority like this guy, like, you got to be held accountable for decisions that you knowingly made that were wrong, okay? He knew what he was doing, all right? From this evidence that Rand Paul's talking about, it seems like he knew what he was doing. And if that's the case, you should get a lot more than 5 years, all right? Let's move on. Okay, we're talking about the speakership. We are moments away from a new Speaker of the House getting selected. All right. It looks promising between Steve Scalise and Jim Jordan. Okay. However, Kevin McCarthy has allies that are weighing nominating him for speaker. Okay? I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I just thought I'd mention this because this is crazy that this, like, bro, you were kicked out. Like, just take the L, okay? Some of McCarthy's allies are discussing nominating him for speaker. Multiple sources tell CNN, which could complicate and prolong the process for electing a new speaker, given McCarthy faces long odds of securing the gavel. Okay, what I want to say about that is you don't get to tear Matt Gaetz a new one. I'm talking to the media here. Okay, the media doesn't get to rip Matt Gaetz up for being immature and ousting the speaker right when Israel's at war, and then not rip up Kevin McCarthy for trying to prolong this process. All right, like you got to yell at him too. I want to see you ripping him up too, which they probably will because he's a Republican anyway. But I just figured I wanted to get that off my chest because I'm calling out you're a hypocrite if you don't criticize McCarthy for this, and you did criticize Matt Gaetz for prolonging and for destabilizing Congress further in the middle of a war. Ridiculous. Okay, allies of McCarthy say they are not acting at the behest or direction of McCarthy, but some of them have said they will only vote for him until told otherwise. So far, McCarthy has refused to rule out a return to speakership or thrown his support behind another candidate. Okay, so he hasn't supported anyone else. He also has not ditched the idea of coming back. All right. Some allies to House Majority Leader Steve Scalise see the maneuvering by McCarthy's allies as designed to hobble Scalise's bid for speaker, which has heightened tension between their camps. McCarthy and Scalise have maintained a cordial working relationship over the years, but have long been seen as potential rivals. Scalise considered challenging McCarthy for leader in 2018, and this year, McCarthy tapped his trusted allies, Reps Patrick McHenry and Garrett Graves, not his top leadership deputies, to help him with his speaker's bid in January, the debt ceiling crisis, and the government funding deadline. Okay? So I just wanted to cover this very quickly. Okay? And we had a couple more topics, but we're running pretty late. So I don't want to keep you guys too long. So we're going to cut it there. Okay? And, if you guys liked what you heard, if you liked my opinions on some of these things, make sure you like the podcast. Make sure you follow along for some updates twice a week, Sundays and Wednesdays at 3 p.m. So you can keep up to date, all right? All right. Peace.